Good evening, everyone. My name is Darshan Doshi. I'm the founding director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Flame University. We are in the second last webinar series of the 15 series that we had, where we invited entrepreneurs such as Lokesh Gupta, investors such as Sanjay Mehta, educators such as Dr. Arvind Sinchure, business leaders such as Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, right? And we've had a great run of series. We've had in audience, we've had entrepreneurs who are in their early stages, entrepreneurs who are looking to exit their companies. We have had aspiring entrepreneurs, we've had students, we have had educators, professionals, startup ecosystem partners, amongst many. Now I understand, today a lot of people have festivities going on at home, and it's a Saturday evening as well. So I really appreciate you taking time on a Saturday evening to join us for this session. I have a good friend of mine I've known since probably 15 years now, during my engineering at VIT Pune, Lokesh Gupta. Before I introduce him, I just wanted to make a few announcements. One is we run at Flame Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. We run an incubator program for students, and the applications for which are open. You may or may not have even a business idea. The whole purpose of the incubator is to help you through the thought process and come up with a business idea, form a team, create a minimum viable product, test it out with who you think the prospective customers are, and hopefully you get into the process of building your own business out, right? And on the other hand, which is open to everyone, any startup in any part of the world, is called the Flame Origins program. It's an early stage startup accelerator program for revenue positive startups. Typically, we've had startups whose revenues are between 5 lakhs to about 1 crore, may be funded, may not be funded. And because of COVID, we are going to run both the incubator program and the accelerator program virtually. So essentially, you could be a part of this program, and the commitment really is that you're committed to building your own venture and that we can add value to your venture, right? So there is a certain selection process. Madhuri, if you could share the links of both Origins program and the incubator program in chat, that would be great.
Yeah, it's already on the chat.
Perfect, thank you. And then lastly, we launched one of the first programs, 1-year program, postgraduate program in entrepreneurship and innovation. We've got great partners with the likes of Babson College USA, Vadhvani Foundation, Your Story, Campus Fund, Vadhvani Foundation, and TiE Pune, right? That program has already begun, but because of COVID, we understand, a lot of the undergrad students are yet to complete their final exams or so there's a lot of uncertainty around it. So we've kept some of the applications open, but we will close them in the next 10 days. So if you or anybody you know is looking to build a business, and really needs an intense program which will handhold through the ideation, product development, early customers, building your network, investor connection, and understanding the life cycle of a startup, this is the program for you. So please take a look at it. Right now, coming back to today's session, I want to thank Lokesh Gupta. Lokesh is a dear friend, known him for over a decade, since we both were doing engineering at Vishwakarma Institute of Technology here in Pune. And he went on to do his PhD in the US, where he will share his thoughts around how he started DATTUS. But he's an entrepreneur who built an IoT startup, built a loyal customer base, which included the likes of Harley Davidson and many others in the US, in Europe. And then a couple of years ago, exited or got an acquisition from Plex Systems USA. So he continues in that role post acquisition, and sits right across here in Bane Aun in Pune, right? So one of the as I understand, Pune houses four of the top five IoT startups in India, right? Two of them have already been acquired. Few are on their way as well. So very quick introduction of Lokesh. He is a director at Plex Systems. He manages product development and is a board member for Plex India. Prior to his role, he co-founded and served as CTO of DATTUS Inc. and head of DATTUS Private Limited India. DATTUS was an industrial IoT company headquartered in Indianapolis, USA, which was acquired by Plex Systems in July 2018. He has over 14 years experience in industrial automation, sensors, data analytics, IoT, big data, and cloud. He worked for Forbes Marshall Pune as an engineering in the engineering design and development space for a couple of years after completing undergrad from University of Pune. He has been granted 3 patents and 10 international publications. So over to you, Lokesh. Really appreciate you taking time on a Saturday evening away from your family, away from your work, and sharing your thoughts around what got you started with DATTUS, your journey so far, and the acquisition process. What was the thinking behind it? What were you thinking of? Why were you thinking of getting acquired? What has been life post acquisition? And what does the next few years look like, right? So all yours. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Darshan, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. So today I'll walk you through the journey that I had at DATTUS and now at Plex, and I will also share some information on what do you need to do to build products for B2B space, or if you're looking to enter into B2B startups. Darshan has already covered my introduction, so I will go into DATTUS history. So I have a master's and a PhD in electrical engineering from Purdue University. I graduated in 2013, and we started originally we started as a sensors company back in 2012. During my PhD, I had built some industrial sensors, and we pitched those sensor technologies in some business plan competitions, and we got about $100,000 as award, and that's how we started the company. Um, uh, we won, I guess, over in 2012 and 2013 and early 2014, we won about 5 or 6 competitions altogether in US. And that's how we raised that was our seed capital, which was like about $220,000. No strings attached money. So that's one way of raising funding without parting away from equity, right? So that's how we started. In 2013, we originally started as a sensors company, but when we went out in the market and did some research, spoke to people, we did about 200 interviews in our first 6 months after winning the competition. What we figured out was sensors is not a problem for customers. What customers were, at least the industrial space customers were looking for was they don't know what to do with the data. They wanted to collect the data. They want to store the data. They want the data to tell them that what's wrong with the industrial assets that are being monitored or that from which the data is getting collected. So we in 2014 we did our first pivot, and we became a truly an IoT company, industrial IoT company. After that, we built a end-to-end IoT platform, which used big data technologies, which had hardware presence or edge presence. If you're familiar with IoT terminologies, where you deploy a simple hardware on the machine shop floor to collect data, do local data processing, push data to cloud. And we built a analytics platform as well, where users can get real-time insights from the machines. that in the 5 years of the journey, we raised venture capital as well. Uh, we raised venture capital, and we had customers like Harley Davidson and Toyota. But in 2018, something that we started realizing was IoT platform on standalone is a great solution, but to really scale it up, you need to you need to be part of the manufacturing execution systems, or the MES softwares that run on that actually manufacturing companies use to manage their shop floor operations, or plant floor operations. And you need to you need to have ERP, which is enterprise resource planning software, such as CRM solutions or CMMS solutions, right? So and as a nascent company, you cannot build the whole portfolio, right? So that's when we started saying that, okay, if we really want to scale up our product, our technology, and we want to really build uh, a global big company, we should look into either mergers, or we should look for acquisitions. And that's when Plex opportunity came across. We came across Plex. Plex has a 25-year-old history. They have been one of the big players, at least in the mid-market segment in automotive and food and beverage space, for last 25 years, offering MES and ERP solutions. And they were looking for IIoT. So it was a great match that way. And that's when we decided we will get acquired by Plex. Um, so that has been my history. Since then, I've been leading IoT product development, IoT and developer platform product development at Plex. I'm also a board member and and part of leadership team of Plex India. Plex India just started 2 years ago, so it's right now predominantly an engineering center. We have a team of about 50 people in India today. Uh, so with that background and with that history, let me jump into today's topic. How do you build product? Uh, how do you build products for B2B space? So first thing, there is a significant difference between when you are selling a solution to a business versus you're selling a solution to an end consumer or a single user, right? The biggest thing is what I say is need versus want in terms of decision making process. When we see B2B space, right, most of the decisions are made based on need and value. If they don't see a need, if they don't get the required value or a sustainable value, it's not like one-time problem solving. It should continue to add value to their business. Then you can actually, then that product can be, then that product sale can be made in a B2B space. In B2C space, it's vice versa. You can actually uh, sell one-off products and you can still scale up because you can have thousands and hundreds of thousands of customers. But in B2B space, the approach is need based. In B2C space, it's want based, right? Uh, because B2B space is complicated, but it's need and value based, there is a lot of evaluation that happens. There is a customer stickiness, right? If you are able to sell a product in B2B space, there is a good chance that that product is going to last for at least a year to even few years. I've seen products which have been running for last 20 years. And that's why B2B space becomes very unique, because you have sustained customer relationship and long-term customer relationships, right? Another big difference when you're building products for B2B spaces, the user personas that you have to deal with. In B2B space, you could have multiple user personas that you need to interact with, and your product or your solution has to provide value to all those user personas. It's not like you're just selling a product to one person and you're done with it, right? You need to that product may be utilized by right from a shop floor operator all the way to till the COO of the company, and the user interfaces need to be different. The value that the product delivers at each level in the organization, that can be different, right? because the personas are different, there are multiple stakeholders. When you're selling in B2B, B2C space, you're selling it to one person. When you're selling it in B2B space, you're selling it to the whole organization. And in organization, the decision-making processes can be really complicated. You may be, the person who will be using the product may not even be part of the decision-making process. The person who is assigning the check may never see the demo of the solution, right? So you have to navigate all those, you need to navigate all those channels. Uh, so that those are the key differences between B2B space and B2C space. And all these four parameters actually affect the your product development methodologies, how you develop a product if you're a young startup, right? So um, what we are following, we didn't when I started as DATTUS, we didn't follow this process, but later on we started moving into this process after about 15 months of trying out everything and uh, basically trying out everything, learning on the job. Then we figured out that okay, we can build great products using this methodology, where it's like, okay, design thinking, agile, lean is equal to great product. What design thinking helps you is you build the right things. Agile means build fast and improve rapidly. Lean means build things right to avoid wastage, because again, startups, you are working with constrained resources. You don't have, you may one of my friends used to say, one of our advisors used to say that as a startup, you only you run behind three things: customer, employees, and money. You only get two at any given point in time. So lean is so there is this lean startup movement, right? You build something with you build things right from the get-go, so that you avoid wastage, right? And I'll go into details of what individually these sections mean. When you build with this process, you get a great product with optimized resources, and you get the product out in the market at a very fast pace. You continuously build over it, you continuously iterate over it, and you continuously provide incremental value to your customers. Another thing is, and this is where incremental value comes into play, right? Because you have a customer which you want to build a long-term relationship with a B2B customer. And if you're not delivering incremental value at regular intervals, then chances of you getting replaced are high. So you have to keep on expanding your product portfolio. You have to keep on expanding your feature set, functionality set to satisfy that customer's requirements. Um, so let me first start with design thinking, and how design thinking helps in reducing, how design thinking helps you build a solution without building an actual solution. Um, so most of the startups start with an idea, and they start with an idea, and then they try to fit that idea to a problem, or you might start with a problem, you come up with a solution, right? But idea, problem, and solution doesn't translate into a business, into a sustainable and a scalable business, right? You need to validate that problem. So what design thinking process tells you is, you have an idea, you have a problem, but let's go out and validate it, whether it's really a problem or it's just a hunch, right? Or just an observation. So you actually start with going out and talking to people and talk. Let's say in our case, we started as a sensors company. We had a solution already in place, but what we did, went out and when we spoke to customers, we realized that, okay, sensors is not a problem. Sensors is not going to solve any, is not going to be a scalable business, because it's a commodity at the end of the day. What problems customers are facing is what they need to do with the data. That happened when we went out, spoke to these 200 people, 200 industry leaders, or 200 target segments that we thought were target segments. When we spoke to them, we realized that, okay, the problem is different, right? So what it does is, you empathize, you go out without any judgment of predefined notions that, okay, my solution is the best and my solution is going to solve any problem. No, it doesn't work that way. So you go out, You just interview people, talk to people, what problems they are facing in their in their life. Obviously the user persona that you're targeting has to be related to the solution or the idea that you have, but you understand what problems they are facing, and be non-judgmental, collect that data, identify a user persona. Once you have collected the data, you have identified a user persona, then you can start defining the requirements that that solution looks like. Okay. And many times the ideas will fit in because ideas came based on certain problems that you might have experienced, but you need to define it in a coherent manner, right? Many startups many startups just start building and build features at a random pace, or just keep on building, and that may not work, right? So you define the user personas for whom you're building it. You build the requirements. Next thing is you internally ideate with your team. You build some, and if you're building a software product, rather than building the product, just create a mock-up, present it to the customer, get the feedback. If you build a product first, which a lot of startups do, what happens is that you build a product and the customer says, okay, this is not what I was expecting, or this is not satisfying my requirements. And what it does is you have just wasted your resources. So design thinking process helps you build that story without actually building the product, or build that solution, showcase that solution, get feedback without actually building the solution. It helps you, and uh, it might appear to be a slow process, but trust me, as you build, as you start doing this, it is the it builds you it helps you build speed, actually, because now you can rapidly iterate without worrying about, hey, what is going to be my cloud infrastructure? No, that comes later on. What is going to be my engineering? If you can build mock-ups, show it, hey, this is what we are thinking, and it helps you build the right things, right? Then you take the mock-up, share it with engineering team after it's validated, iterated, tweaked, and then you build a solution, and now you have built a solution that customers want. The next part is agile and lean, right? A lot of startups jump into agile bandwagon because, hey, everybody wants to do agile. First, figure out whether agile fits the requirement or not, right? A lot of projects are there which actually waterfall works really well. So don't jump into the hype of agile. Agile is great for some industries, for others it may not work very well. So agile, agile helps you be fast. It helps you manage the uncertainty that comes into product development. So you can deliver solutions, deliver solutions in iterative manner and incremental fashion, and you can move really fast. One of the early mistakes that we did, because I come from electrical background, my co-founder was from electrical engineering background, and we were not aware of software. A lot of software nuances that happen is like, okay, how do you manage quality? What are bugs and defects, right? And we said, okay, we will solve bugs and defects later on. Let's just build the feature because customer wants it, or we have a paying customer, let's build it. What it happens is, over a period of time, and with agile you are delivering at a rapid pace, so those bugs and defects either are becoming bigger, or they are getting shoved back into a bucket, keep on piling up and piling up, and one day the whole solution comes crashing down. And I still remember in 2015 our system just went down at 1 a.m. The whole thing came down, and the whole engineering team was scrambling, with going to the office and figuring out what to do, right? So, and this is where lean concepts come into play, right? If you can build quality from get-go, that's the best way. If you cannot deliver a quality product, don't deliver it to the customer, because bad product is worse than no product, right? So build quality from get-go. And same applies for security these days. If you're building a software solution, make sure you have followed some security practices. One hack or one breach can be just devastating for the whole company. Um, Lastly, design thinking is a qualitative analysis tool, right? It's a qualitative analysis mechanism. But Agile and Lean, you can actually measure how you are progressing, what type of bugs that are going on, uh, what's the tech that you're accumulating, how fast you're building it. All of that can be measured. I would strongly say measure from day one what you're delivering at 2 weeks, at what velocity you're delivering, because if you can, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. This is a famous quote from Peter Drucker, who was a economist, and you need to learn to measure. Startups focus heavily. Lot of startup founders are engineers. They love to build things. I was like that. I used to, and I still love to build things. But if you can't measure what you're building, what the rate at which you're building, it becomes very difficult later on to actually manage it, right? Uh, the other thing on the product side is awareness, right? In B2B space, product awareness is the key. B2B customers don't like surprises. They don't like one product suddenly being released on a day, and it's like they will hate you for that, even if your product provides a lot of value. And this we learned a lot of hard way because we were releasing products at 2 week sprints and we were not communicating. Communication used to go at a random time. We were not publishing release notes. So customers like, hey, I'm seeing something new. I don't know what to do with it, right? So in a lot of industries which are traditional, if you're building products for, like, let's say we were building for automotive, so it's a very traditional industry. They need predictability of what's coming, because they need to manage trainings, and they need to manage trainings for their users. So they don't like if new feature pops up in a software suddenly one day, right? So make sure you build those communication channels. Like these are good practices. And if you this has nothing to do with whether it's a big company or a startup. These are some good habits that you build, because this helps you in your marketing efforts as well. Again, if you are a startup, you will not have a marketing team or a sales team. You might just, one person will be doing all of it, or your one co-founder might be doing marketing stuff. So together you can actually do it right. Make sure you are communicating whatever updates it may be, maintenance intervals, blog post, roadmap, release notes. Just create a plan, present it. If it doesn't work out as a plan, you can always tell the customer that, hey, it didn't work out to the plan, we are pivoting. That's perfectly fine. Customers that we are forgiving, but not informing, they don't forgive. It leaves a bad taste. Make sure internal stakeholders are aligned, and this comes to engineering teams, right? When you're building a product, when you are a CEO or a CTO, you have a vision, you have a goal, you have a vision. It's perfectly defined in your head. You know what we are building, what we are looking to achieve. But that communication, that product awareness, or your strategy awareness, or your goal awareness, that has to be known by the rest of your team members. You have a small team, but if that small team is unaware, then you cannot build a coherent solution. You need to, as a co-founder, if you're a founder, you have to explain to your team members, whether it's engineering, marketing, sales, or whoever it may be, why you are building it. It's not how, it's not what, it starts with why you are building it. Then comes what you're building it, and then all these folks will figure out how to build it. Then it's not, then you just have to you just have to be part of the team at that point, because you are building those engineering teams, those high performance engineering teams. They are great at figuring out how to build it. But if they don't know why, there is no factor. They lack motivation and encouragement. That's why is very important. And last thing is, the way you communicate with internal stakeholders, make sure you communicate with external stakeholders. Customers are not the only external stakeholders. You have partners. You may have, if you're a small to mid-scale company, you may have built some partnerships. Make sure your partners are aware of things that they should be aware of at right time. Make sure your investors are aware of. A lot of startups fail to communicate with their investors, or they communicate abruptly, or when the investor calls, then they communicate. No, create an habit if you're a startup to communicate, send out a release note to a customer saying, this is what we achieved, this is what we are lacking, this is where we need your help. That that builds trust. If you and everybody, a lot of startups need money, follow on capital, right? That trust helps. That trust gets you those brownie points in future. That okay, the investors can rely on this founder. He has, he needs help. He's honest. We are there to help, right? And investors are there to help. It's not like that investors are just putting in money and they want to get out. No, investors are there to help. So make sure you have external communication. In terms of B2B product opportunities, one of the big advantages of B2B spaces, you can actually have sustainable and predictable revenues because the the sales relationships are for long durations. You there is a customer retention because again, because the products are complicated, it's very difficult for customer to get rid of the product or not get rid of, change the product quickly, right? So they have to think a lot. They have to manage the change process. If you are delivering continuous value, there will be a great loyalty. Loyalty drives referencing. So if you have great loyalty, if you're delivering value, those customers can become referenceable customers and they can drive new sales. That is the best way of marketing and sales process. If your existing customer can refer you to another customer or get on a call and refer you, nothing beats that. No amount of campaigns, no amount of marketing beats that. And this is if you can achieve that, that's the first metric of your success, that you have found a referenceable customer. Yeah. There are a lot of challenges as well in B2B space. The biggest one is free POCs. A lot of B2B companies will ask you, hey, can we try your product for free? And as a startup company, you become desperate and you say, yes, I would advise against it, because we had this personal experience. Free POCs go forever and you don't get any value out of it. You might think that, oh, I might get some marketing, I might get some letter of appreciation or letter of or MOU. It's all meaningless. At the end of the day, a purchase order is purchase order. Nothing beats that. Even if that purchase order is for $1,000, perfectly fine. It's a purchase order, right? It speaks way more volume. It speaks way more than whatever other marketing stuff or whatever other collaboration stuff that your customer is providing you, right? Don't get into a trap of free POCs, because free POCs can distract you, and free POCs are can be a big drain on your resources as well. And from a sales standpoint, free POCs, think of this way: if customer doesn't have a skin in the game, then customer was not interested from get-go. So think of that when you're building a product and you're iterating and you're building rapidly. Think of that. Another trap that a lot of B2B startups fall into is one more feature trap. Customer says, hey, build this feature and we will buy. Then you build that feature and then it's like, hey, something has changed in our organization. In the meantime, can you build this? And this goes on and on and on. And by the time you realize you have spent, like, you have lost 1 year and you have not closed the customer and your product has moved into a very random direction. Don't fall into that gap. The approach that you can take is buy it, I will build it, rather than build it for free. You buy the solution, I will build a feature for you, right? But building features, but learn to say no. You cannot build each and every feature in B2B space. The products can become really complicated and it can really distract. It can completely deviate you from your strategic alignment. And when 3 years or 5 years from now, your product can be in a really horrible shape if you have built those one-off features. So make sure those features that you build are aligned with your long-term strategy. Identifying decision makers is another challenge in B2B space. The product users may be very different from decision makers. Decision-making processes are different. One experience that we had when I was trying to sell in US and in India is US, the decision-making process is very collaborative. Even if you go and pitch to CIO or CFO or CEO or CEO, they're going to say, talk to these 10 folks. And if they give thumbs up, then we can have a discussion on purchase. In India, the lot of companies still follow top heavy approach, where if the top management is convinced, you can make a sale. So figure out how that works out. For B2B space, if you're a startup, be prepared for long sales cycles. All your calculations should make sure that all your calculations for fundraising, financial planning should take into account that your sales cycles can be really, really long. B2B space sales cycles can vary between from few weeks to 10 months, 11 months. In enterprise sales, it's 15 months, 18 months as well. So plan for it. Lastly, when you're selling or building products for B2B space, they have absolute focus on reliability and predictability. Reliability of the product and prediction on what is coming. They don't like surprises. So if you cannot provide that, then B2B spaces may not be the right business area for you. The product has to be reliable. It has to continue to deliver value, and it has to deliver value in a predictable way. Last thing is, if you build a company, if you have built the customers, and if you're looking for an exit, these are the few things that will help you get better valuations, or at least or have focused conversations, right? Make sure you're clear on your value proposition, what your product does, what problems your product is solving, what is your technology architectures. A lot of startups, they are at the cusp of acquisition or merger, or they have entered into discussions and they have nothing of this sort. So make sure you have that. Make sure you have references from your customers ready and handy. Make sure you have good amount of product documentation, because acquisition requires lots and lots of documentation. We had 350-page documentation just on our product, and then this is just product documentation. There is your technology stack documentation, there is IT document, and then you have 10,000 other pages for finance. So that's a different webinar altogether. So I'm not going to go in that, but product documentation, make sure you have everything ready if you're going for an exit. Build IP, it helps you get better valuations. We had filed for a couple of patents when DATTUS was acquired. Lastly, team alignment. Startups, if there is no team alignment, if you have not, your team has to be on board with you, and not just your immediate reportees, but the whole organization. Because if your team is not aligned, it should not happen that you are going there to sign your acquisition agreement, and then the people are resigning from your organization. That should not happen. Team alignment is a must. If you are a product-based startup, everybody should rally behind that decision. So that's all I had. I have covered a lot of topics: product management, acquisition. I can go on and on. So thoughts, open for discussion.
Excellent. So thanks a lot for that, Lokesh. We had Sagar Apte, who sold or rather exited Car IQ to Varroc a year or so ago. In the previous couple of sessions ago. And he shared or walked us through an acquisition checklist.
Yes.
And so it was good to hear thousands of documents, thousands of pages of documentation required. And the thought process that goes in it, right?
Yes.
We do have some questions. Everyone, if you have any questions, it can be product, B2B, B2C, acquisition, investments, the whole gamut, right? So just add your questions. I'll ask the first question here by Kiran Deshpande, Lokesh. Before you make design thinking, do you make value stream mapping of a customer?
Absolutely. But at that point, it's still an hypothesis. The whole idea of design thinking is to validate the hypothesis. See, idea, problem, solution, value stream design Until it's validated, it's all hypothesis. Design thinking is all about validation so that you build the right thing.
Excellent. Here's Dr. Rajesh Agarwal. It's slightly different, and you may or may not have the context given the exit that you've had. Just wanted to know, thank you for sharing your opinions. Just wanted to know regarding financial support, is there any difference in approach regarding funds released by banks in B2B versus B2C?
We never went to banks, so I don't have enough insights to give you on that front. One thing that I at least have heard is, if you have a purchase order in your hand from a B2B company, and if that purchase order is from a renowned name, getting loans is easy because now you can get loans against POs.
I have a few questions of my own that I
Yes.
prepared.
Yeah.
Lokesh, you were part of the GeoGenX program, the startup
Yes.
initiative of Reliance
Yeah.
Industries,
Yeah.
when I was heading that. And it was amazing to see both the set of challenges that you were facing as well as
Yeah.
trying to crack the Indian market.
Yes.
And then, the whole experience of free POCs and paid
Yeah.
POCs and
Yeah.
whatnot, right?
Yeah.
That was a very interesting time. And then more recently, you scaling up your product team here in Pune.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, more on the talent that we have in India, right? Your co-founder is based out of the US,
Yes.
and clearly a great salesperson,
Yeah.
stakeholder who brought in
Yeah.
all these customers,
Yeah.
right? We leave the sales part,
Yeah.
but on the talent side, how did you go about building your team? And while you may have done the interviews, what was the thought process of kind of coming back to India and then building this team? So if you can just share the talent access as well as your internal thought process.
So on moving back to India, there was a personal decision as well. There was personal. Uh, uh, my family is based out of India, so I definitely wanted to come back to India, and it aligned well with the startup world. So, but in terms of talent, right? India has great talent, and you will find really good product and software and engineering talent, I should say, in India. The the way I look at getting talent is the person eager to learn. It's not about the number of technologies that person know, because technologies are changing every day. Every day something new comes out. Is the person willing to learn or not? Is the person committed or not? And is the person excited about being part of a startup or not? Right? If you get those three things, uh, that's the right person. And surprisingly, when I came back in 2012, it was a perfect timing to start a startup in India. And now it's now as well, that boom, that not the boom, that rush that started in 2008 with after 2008 meltdown, global meltdown, that is still continuing, and people are excited to work in startups. So I don't see the talent is a problem at all. um, in terms of moving to India, definitely, if you're a company, if you're selling in US and you have if you're if you can build in India, there is a cost factor that definitely plays for an advantage, but it's not a deciding factor. Right.
All right, thank you. Here's a question from Manish Kulkarni.
Yeah.
Of all your customers, do you have any successful case studies in Indian manufacturing plants? If so, which sectors?
It's we do have it. We have a couple of case studies, specifically. We only targeted automotive space, so we I don't have case studies for other sectors, but yeah, we do have some case studies. One of the case studies is is from a North India based automotive manufacturer, where some of the challenges, some of the manufacturing efficiency challenges that they were facing, and those challenges were popping up just because of the operator behavior, the way they were not following the standard operating procedures, and there were quality issues and efficiency issues. So our IIoT solution helped them uncover those challenges and fix those problems.
Excellent. Here's a question post acquisition, right? So how has your life been? What kind of roles that you've had to put on, going from being the co-founder CTO, having complete autonomy,
Yeah,
decision making. You pretty much define everything that happens in your own
yeah,
company,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
To being part of this 25-year-old multinational company.
yeah.
Uh, and while you're still in a leadership position, there are a few changes that must have happened. So maybe you can speak a
Yes.
little bit about what were those changes, and
So
what are the goods, what are the challenges?
So biggest thing is you don't need to sell externally. That was a big advantage because you have a sales team who are more experienced in this enterprise sales process. But apart from that, in my case, in my case, the the change except the sales process, in my case the change was not that drastic, and there are a couple of reasons. I'm in a product management role. I'm a product manager, right? Product manager is classified, is defined as a CEO of a product. A company may have 10, 15 different products, but product manager can be classified as CEO of the product. They have to interact with marketing, they have to interact with sales, they have to interact with engineering, they have to interact with customers. They may not be selling to customers, but they have to get that feedback, right? So a lot of that has not changed, but things like now I have big staff to help me out with a lot of these challenges. That's another thing. um, Another change that has happened is in startups, your decision process is much faster, but error chances of wrong decisions is also higher. They are also higher in when you are part of a bigger organization. Your your decisions are collaborative. Your decisions or thought process are collaborative. So it appears slower, but your decisions will be more, the chances of those decisions being right uh, become improve drastically. So, and in initial first 18 months, yes, there was a big shift, me deciding everything, then rather than now it's a collaborative decision. Is like, okay, let me check feedback. But once you get hang of it, it works really well.
Excellent. Now,
Yeah,
I cannot not ask a question about how you approach valuation, right? And
yeah,
during an exit.
yeah,
A lot of challenges coming through, and I'm actually seeing, due to COVID, a lot of startups looking for an exit,
yeah.
right? How did you approach valuation? How did you approach the discussion or negotiation around valuation? What were the key factors? Clearly, the acquisition went through, and you're staying beyond the committed time.
Yeah,
So, you seem to be enjoying the role, and you're
yeah,
at peace with it.
yeah.
But what were some of the concerns? How did you overcome them? And outside of valuation, if something was much more important, then what
Yeah.
was it?
So outside the value, the biggest thing that was important is, so there are two things that are most important outside the valuation piece. What is the plans for India? Because we had this India office, we had almost 10 employees when the acquisition happened. What is the plan for them, right? Because when you're getting acquired, it's not the co-founder that is getting acquired, it's a company, and company is formed because the people were there, right? What happens to the people? What's the scaling plans? And then comes the founder, is like, okay, what is it in there for employees as well as founders to stay with the company, right? So that is that does forms part of the negotiation, that okay, is there a value for founder to stay longer? And me and my co-founder and five of our previous employees are still with Plex. So we did a good job of negotiating that value for all of us. um, in terms of valuations, as I said, uh, see, valuation is dependent on what stage of startup you are in. Are you early revenues? Are you established revenues with sustained, like a SaaS solution which is generating continuous revenues? Do you have one customer who do you have only one customer, or do you have 10 customers? uh, and it also depends on buyer as well, what buyer is looking for. Buyer can typically, startup acquisitions happen for three things: access to customer, access to technology, and access to people. In our case, all access to customer was slightly on lower side because we had about 8 customer accounts. But our technology was great. We had some patents as well, and our team was great. And Plex wanted to expand globally. So all those factors kind of played in the valuation discussions as well. Um, a- anything, any you can always refer to the industry. What were the acquisition multiples to have a reference point at least. In our case, it was 7 to 12x of revenue multiple. But that's but seven what that's not the only key, right? If your team is really strong and your founders are really passionate, your team is fully rounded, and you have customers who can refer you, I think all of these cards can be played, and you can really pump up your valuation.
Are you seeing changes? This is a question from Avkash Dagur. Uh,
Yeah.
Due to current pandemic situation, do you see valuations of the exits changing or going down in your own network, maybe where you must have heard this?
I I I I don't have an answer for that question right now, because I've been slightly plugged off from that for last 6 to 8 months, and Darshan knows this. Darshan. So I have not been that very well plugged into but at least what I'm hearing in the news, and what some of the reports that I read through, there is a downward pressure on valuations, because everybody's struggling. And it's not just startups, huh? It's the big enterprises are struggling as well. So if big enterprises, yes, there is always an opportunity, but big enterprises are also conserving cash.
Yeah,
So think from that perspective as well. It's both sides, both sides. It's going to happen.
sure. Here's a question from Ashutosh Ambekar.
Yeah.
What is your experience about Indian SMEs or larger Indian companies willing to invest in IoT solutions? Are they spending even given the COVID situation?
IoT adoption. I can talk about industrial IoT. IoT is a very broad area. So I'm not going to touch on IoT in healthcare, IoT in transportation, specifically IoT, industrial IoT. Indian large companies are investing in industrial IoT, and if you if you just Google that, you will find some companies who recently raised funding in industrial IoT space. I will not name those companies, but they have raised funding. Uh, what this pandemic has done is, the shop floor or the plant floor operations where actual industrial IoT provided value, because of these social distancing norms and remote working, which was not earlier possible on plant floor and shop floor. With IIoT, that has become possible. So that is the biggest pitch of IIoT. So that transition is happening. The adoption of IIoT solutions has increased. So uh, that's what I've been seeing right now. But again, pandemic started 9 months ago. So pitches started 9 months ago. Now that those deals are converting, right? So that's all.
Yeah, funding has
Yeah,
been
yeah,
quite difficult actually, even in the
yeah,
early stages.
yeah,
That's a different topic that we can
yeah, yeah,
discuss. But
yeah,
here's a question from Nisar Godeshi.
yeah,
Virtual reality, augmented reality,
yeah,
and then mixed reality, they've been picking up, right?
yeah.
Have you built visualization components in any of these using this?
We didn't
Okay.
we didn't. Yeah.
All right. And then here's the last question from Shubha Prasanna. What are the reasons because of which DATTUS decided to get acquired rather than take the company forward in a growing IIoT market?
And I answered this during my pitch, during my presentation as well. So one of the challenges with IIoT is it's slightly different from the way IoT works in healthcare and other spaces. In the case of when it comes to industrial IoT, right, that IoT solution has to be part of your industrial automation space, and it has to be part of that manufacturing execution systems that run actually the shop floor. Those softwares are provided by SAP and Oracle and Microsoft Dynamics of the world. Automation software is provided by Rockwell Automation, General Electric, Mitsubishi, and Siemens of the world. And ERP solutions are provided by, again, Microsoft, Oracle, Salesforce, right? So you are in this middle layer, and you are in any direction, you'll be going against 900-pound gorilla. rather than and you can always build solutions that compete with them, but for you to survive, for you to grow, it's a very difficult market. So that's when we decided that, okay, what makes sense? Why can't we can we look for a company that has only MES and ERP and targeting and is relatively small, where IIoT fits in well and we both can grow. So that's when we decided is like, okay, it makes sense to it makes sense to be part of a bigger product ecosystem and then grow together rather than just trying to build and trying to struggle and survive.
Awesome. I think it's been a beautiful marriage between DATTUS and Plex, and the timing of it also was I think in hindsight, it was right, or you got it right?
Yes.
At that time, it's obviously difficult to say. But hey, I think we are at 6 o'clock. Thanks a lot for joining us. For those who joined us, participants, thanks a lot for spending an hour on a Saturday evening to join us. Our last session is on Wednesday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we've invited Rajan. Rajan is the co-partner or partner at Upeka SaaS Accelerator. It's Asia's first SaaS-specific early-stage startup accelerator program, co-founded along with Prasanna Krishnamurthy. And he's going to talk about value SaaS. How do you build businesses which bring value to the founders, to the investors, to the team members? And you may or may not want to play the venture capital game, right? And so we are going to have a very interesting conversation with him. Definitely, SaaS is on the rise. We are on Zoom right now, and we've seen what has happened to Zoom over COVID. We've seen what has happened with EdTech, health tech, many tech-enabled companies taking off, right? So join us on Wednesday for that session. It's going to be an awesome one. I'm looking forward to it. Again, Lokesh, thanks a lot for spending time on a Saturday evening. Congratulations on this beautiful journey, and looking forward to sitting down and learning more in the future.
Thanks, Darshan. This was great. Happy to be part of this ecosystem. So thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.